Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. We broadcast locally at Radio Northern Beaches and around Australia on the Community Radio Network. I'm really pleased to welcome back to the microphone football legend Simon Madden. Those of you north of the Victorian border and maybe places in Wagga and Cowra and that will know who this guy is. Everybody north of there will go, who? But that's perfectly fine because we live in a big, wide land. And Simon, it's always a pleasure to have you back on the show. Welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me. I must have said something right the first time because you've invited me back. So that's good when you get repeat business. Yeah, look, it's great. I mean, it's interesting in Melbourne and Victoria because, you know, once a footballer, always a footballer. I haven't played for about 40 years, I think it is, 30 years. I've forgotten it. But people keep coming up with it because they watch Fox Footy, they see a replay. Oh, I remember that. So I'd imagine someone in Melmaninga in New South Wales or someone of that ilk might get the same type of reaction that the young kids go, who? The old people go, oh, I remember when. So it's always good, but it has been a great stepping stone to get into sort of more public life, different public life, and get into the business of coaching people, facilitating change in business, leadership development. There's a whole range of areas I work with, organisations that I've been doing for, I think 15, 20 years now. I've been a bit like small in business, small, medium, large, national, international, my own for about 25, 26 years. So I understand how it all works and understand where the world of finance fits in. Funny about that, we all have a mortgage or a loan of some description.
Absolutely.
We all have investments and we all want to do it, have a better life for ourselves and our partner and our family. So I understand the world you work in, right?
Well, I might explain to the listeners one of the reasons why you came on the show. We actually met at a conference probably 2 and a bit years ago now at the AIOFP, the Association of Independently Owned Financial Professionals. And so from that perspective, I asked Simon to come on the show to talk about mental health. And because at that time we had a lot of financial planners that were suiciding, and it's been quite topical because there's been a lot of suicides in the farming community, and so there's been a real spotlight on mental health. And I think it's absolutely poignant that we come back and revisit this because it's not something that you can deal with once and think that it's all over and we don't worry about it again. I think it's like painting the Harbour Bridge, I guess, to use that analogy. You get to the end, you really need to come back and maybe go over some stuff and do a bit of repainting. And so I think part of, I guess, going back through my old interviews, certainly, Simon, it was really pleasing that we got a lot of hits from your show, not unsurprisingly, a lot from the southern states. So that's always kind of nice. But I think the element of mental health is always really, really important. And so I'd like to really go back over some of that ground. And you've sent me some material to look over, which is very similar to what we did a few years back. But maybe it's worth looking at to see if there is a bit of a revamp in the 4 areas. So I might flick back to you, Simon, when you go and talk to people about mental health. What are the primary things that you're talking about?
Well, look, it's interesting. I really talk about 4 parts of your health. Now, there's a lot of talk about mental health, which there should be. We know there's people having a lot of issues with it, but I really like to talk about health in the 4 aspects of your health, and it's your physical health, your emotional health. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. What you do, what you think, what you believe. And I better do it on the right also. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, what you do, what you think, what you feel, and what you believe. And they're all actually interrelated. And I think it's where a lot of people are talking about mental health, but it is directly linked to the other 3 parts of your health. And I think that trying to look at it in isolation makes it a bit harder for people. I've got to work on my mental health. My mental health's not good. But the fact that the concept of what you do, what you think, what you feel, what you believe is all interrelated. And I go back to my sporting days, and people have said that, why would you do that? And I said, well, I know when you're working at a high performance level, and explain to people. So I've given the right pass, handball, but the right pass to the right person in the right place at the right time, in the wrong jumper, in front of 100,000 people at the MCG. right? And so you've made a big mistake and you can't hide and you want the MCG to open up and swallow you, but it doesn't, of course, and you have to keep going. One of the things you learn through that is, so, you know, physically, I can show you some broken fingers. My fingers are, you know, apart from 8 of them, my fingers are good, you know. So I understand the physical side of footy. You know, I've had a little bit of a knee operation, had an elbow cleaned out, all those things that an old footballer. I understand the physical side of it. The mental side was, you know, am I up to this? Can I do this? I'm not sure if I'm good enough. That type of mental, what you're thinking about, what you're doing. And then the emotional one is when you get booed by the fans, the coach drops you, you're really angry at them, you're angry at your opponent, you're angry at yourself. That part of the emotional pressure of it. And then, of course, there's the spiritual pressure. And people say, what do you mean about spiritual? And I said, well, spirituality can have religion in it or not have religion in it. That's up to you. And I'm not a person to judge on what your spirituality is, but it's what you believe. Your spirituality is what you believe about yourself, the people around you, and the greater world. And in football, it tests that. So all those were tested me physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And it tested me what I believed about myself, what I believed about the team I was in, what I believed about the football world, what I believed about the greater world. And so understanding that, you have to start to look at, how do I work on those 4 parts of my health and how they're interrelated? And if you're working in business, and especially, you know, that one of the pressures on people, one of the things that upsets a lot of people is stress. Now, stress isn't good or bad, because if you want to build up a muscle, right? If you want to build up a muscle, you actually have to stress it and break it down minutely, and it rebuilds stronger. So that part of stress is good. If you go and pick up a really heavy weight and try and lift it really hard and you rip a muscle, not good at all. And then if you held the light weight out in front of you, it's easy. But if you hold it for 2 hours, it's a different type of stress. So what you've got to do is, one of the big problems with people is financial stress. And that adds to a whole lot of other stress. So while the finance industry is about making money, of course it is, but it's about being smart about your money, about how you do it. Now, we all don't have to be the richest people in the world. You know, we're all not going to be billionaires. We don't come up with a smart idea. But can we get the best of our situation and the money we have? So that's big about that stress. So I go back to the step of, and please jump in with any questions, because you can see I can talk with a mouthful of marbles on the wall. I've got, and the thing is, I have all this going through my head, and it's got to come out really quickly.
That's great. Look, the people tune in, they don't want to hear me, they want to hear my guests. So please keep going. It's all good.
Now think about this. Let's talk about the physical health of our people at the moment. I went in. I've got a little, new skin things have got to get taken off because being out in the sun too much and the colour of my skin, it's just something you do as you get older. And I was waiting to make the appointment. There's a brochure sitting on the counter, and I just picked it up and said 47% of people, 47% have a chronic illness of some description.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, that can't be right. And I looked at it, and I started to investigate this. So close to half of us have a chronic condition. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff we can talk about that. Basically is, are we looking after ourselves physically? And the thing is, as a especially in Australia, as more so in America, especially in Australia, we're not. There's a whole range of people who are overweight and obese. And that is a lifestyle, but part of that is the food we choose, but also what we don't. It's not what we do, it's what we don't do anymore. A lot of jobs are this. A lot of jobs are sitting on a chair in front of a computer talking to someone else, or doing work on the computer. There are some simple things you can do to improve that. You can actually get a stand-up desk. It's been shown, and this is research shown that you have a stand-up desk, it's better for you. There's a little bit of movement involved. If you've got a bit of a sore back or sore legs, there's platforms, little soft platforms you can stand on, which are good for your feet and good for your back and good for your knees. So there are little things to do. And I'm really big on trying to talk to people about NEAT. Well, this fancy term is NEAT. Not yet. I'm glad you looked at me like that, because that's the normal, the general reaction, is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It's a very
Whoa.
I'll say that again, NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And what that is, now think about this, non-exercise, so it's not exercising, activity, doing things, the thermogenesis burns energy. We now have a fancy term for doing things, just doing things that we normally do. And it's amazed me. And it's amazed me that we have got to that stage, because there's so many people not doing it. And in Australia, we have a choice of so many good foods. We can have as much as we like. We can have, I know there's a bit of a financial, not a crisis, but a cost of living crisis for people. And I've noticed that people in that are maybe buying, are still going to the restaurant but only have a main meal and not a sweet. Or going and buying the $20 bottle, not the $30 bottle, or the $10. But, there's people are adjusting, but we're still having lots of food and lots of food choice in Australia, but yet we are not doing a whole lot of work. And think about this. There are people who do this, and I've seen it. They get up in the morning, walk around their house, walk into their garage, which is connected to their house, jump in their car, drive there 15 to 45 minutes to work, park an underground car park, get lift upstairs and sit at the desk, and then reverse that all the way home. And they've had 3 good meals of good food, and they've done nothing else. And so a lot of people are actually trying to exercise too, but are not building any movement and action into their day. So the first thing I've said to people before is if the set of stairs that you're building, use them. If you park at a station, why don't you park 2 blocks away from the station and walk? So I haven't got time, we'll get up 10 minutes earlier. That's the way it can be done. There are ways that you can, instead of saying, I can't get to the gym, I'm too busy, you can build that into your day. I've done it with people too who have had walking meetings. It's a good day. Instead of sitting at a desk having a meeting, walk around the nearest park, have the same meeting.
So walk and talk.
Yeah, walk and talk. But people don't think that it's appropriate. Now that we've had post-COVID, we've had a whole lot of meetings from home. People are still working from home. That's been a big switch in people's view of what work is. Remember, work used to be a place we went to, and a lot of people, it still is, but a lot of people, work is something we do. It doesn't matter where we do it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time, Simon, because, with that regard, I'm reading, for example, where a lot of workplaces, I think, are ignoring the mental health benefits of the work from home scenario. And I think too many bosses, and not even older bosses, even the younger bosses now, I'm reading in Amazon in America, where they're now saying to pretty well every executive, you have to come back into the office. And I think they're ignoring and I think rejecting the benefits of that work from home scenario that people get from better family life, better mental health, etc.
And look, it's a really good point, because you think about people, and I've seen these people who commute 45 minutes each way, they're going to have an hour and a half extra with their time. Now, I don't think it's of good value, and there's some research to show this, that it's not good value to do all your work from home. If you want to build a strong culture within a business, an organisation, whether it's a business or a charity or a non-for-profit, there needs to be times when people get together in the same room. Now, it doesn't have to be all day, every day, but every now and then you have to build. Now, what that is for each organisation and the group is up to them, and I'm not an expert to say you should have 3 days, you should have 2 days, you should have 1 day a week, but there is time for people to get together and share the proximity of themselves with each other. I think that's really important. And
I certainly agree. Well, look, we're just about half time at the moment, so I don't have a.
I haven't got the other 3 yet.
We'll get to those. I don't have a siren or a whistle, but we're here on Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm with Simon Madden, who these days talks to people about mental health. We're going to go for a short break and be back in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money, and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments, and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels, or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform, or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. Really pleased to have back at the microphone after a short stint away, Simon Madden, who these days, when not being a director at the Essendon Football Club, is actually out there talking to people on a weekly, monthly, etc. basis about mental health. Now, before we went to the break, Simon, we were talking about the 4 different elements: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. We talked a lot about physical, but we've still got 3 to cover. So back to you.
No, thanks, mate. And I just wanted to talk about that because, the best way to talk mental health. Mental health is a state of well-being that enables you to deal with what life throws at you is probably the easiest way to do it. Now, you can have fancy terms. So the idea is coping with normal stresses of life, being productive both at work and in your private life, relating well to other people. And this goes back to the point about getting back to the workplace, being able to relating well to people. There's a whole lot of measurements. So you have to have a really good social connection, and then contributing to your community. So that's an aspect we talked about, working from home and working at work. I don't expect that a whole lot of people would want to go back full time to the office or in town, but there is value in being there sometime and actually committing to people. So that concept of mental health is, what you. I think people have got to remember. Part of this is what you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself.
All right.
So repeat that. What you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself. And when I say by yourself, that doesn't mean when you're sitting lonely in the bush somewhere. It's about sitting, when you're in your car going to work, when you're sitting on a public transport, when you're at a party and you sort of daydream, or any other time when you're talking to yourself. Now there's a whole lot of voices you listen to in the workplace, in the world, that influence you, but in the end there's only one, the one in your head, that you actually listen to the most. So there's a whole lot of exercise which I haven't got time to explain now, but positive talk, etc. Actually looking in the mirror and talking to yourself. Don't do it in public place. It looks a bit. Affirmation about yourself. Having a positive view on what you're doing is really good for your mental health, which is then linked. And a lot of people put the emotional health and the mental health in the same basket. But emotional stuff is how you feel, right? How you feel can affect your ability to carry out everyday activities, your relationships, and your overall mental health. So there's a strong link there. But again, and there's a really interesting measurement that if you exercise, laughter, and sex all produce the same feel-good endorphins.
Okay.
All right. So, and if anybody's ever exercised, and I actually had to do this recently, just for my health. My dad died of a heart attack, so 2 days ago I had my regular heart check. I have pictures taken, and then I had the stress test on Tuesday. And I work really hard and you actually come off and you're tired, and about 10 minutes later you feel fantastic because you produced all these good feel endorphins. And I like to tell people that if it's exercise, laughter, and sex that actually gives you good feel endorphins, what you should do is have sex with your partner on a rowing machine while watching a comedy. That'll cover the whole 3 in 1. I don't say that really, but I emphasise that to make sure that are you doing things that make you feel good. I've got a group of friends, we go out, old school mates, we get out together every now and then, a coffee or a meal, and we talk tish is the best way to say it. But we come away, and a fella said the other day, I said, gee, that's good for the soul, because we just laugh. We laugh at each other, about ourselves, but we feel good. It actually makes you feel well spiritually. You feel good. I believe I've had a good time. So emotional is really important.
Simon, I'd like to pick up on that as a thread, because I've had a lady called Philippa Hunt on the show many, many times. She's a regular contributor, and she does a lot of work as a female financial planner with a lot of women going through financial stress and a whole range of different issues. And again, many men will sit there and go, great, well, what about us? And so, I always look at it, I guess, with an interesting view that we've lived in a man's world for, a couple of thousand years. A little bit of balance the other way is not a bad thing. But notwithstanding that, one of the things that I must say, men, in my opinion, and time in the armed forces and working in very male-dominant arenas, find it hard to make long-term friends. Now, you're probably an exception because you've got that football clique, and you've shared times with a lot of men in that kind of an environment. But men that don't, I must say, one of the things that I personally have found tremendous benefit from in the last number of years is I made a really good friend a number of years back at one of the conferences, and we've maintained that friendship. We swim every week. We've got a little group together, and we occasionally go down to his farm in the Ovens Valley in Victoria. But we do things as men without our wives, and it's not that we're doing manly things and we go out and get drunk or whatever, anything but I mean, we cook, we'll go hiking, we'll do a whole bunch of things. I'm curious, Simon, is that something that you've seen in your recent years where men are starting to reach out and starting to form better bonds as friends?
I think that's a really good. I think, Ray, that's a really good point, because I think what's happened, the conversation of mental health has risen a lot. The action on that hasn't risen at the same time. Men and the older men, and like, I'm in the 60s, so male, pale and stale. Hopefully I don't have that viewpoint. Maybe I'll look it, but hopefully I don't have that viewpoint. Is that, we came from a she'll be right, mate, she'll be right, mate attitude, which, and I've said before about if the gate was broken on the farm, you'd get some wire, you'd wrap around, you make sure the gate should be right. You can't do that with your health, because we have all the ability now to check everything. And one of the things a lot of people find, and both male and female, but especially men, is finding 5 people you could open up to. And I talk and I have our own little thing I've developed for people when I'm speaking is the 5 aspects of your own health. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I kept the man alive, and it's about understanding how to look after ourselves. 1, 2, and I won't. That's for another time. But the 5 one is the 5 one. Can you find 5 people who you will be able to, under trouble, you could trust to open up to? I'm having trouble now. It might be a partner, and it might have a best friend, but it might be a doctor. But what if your wife's away? Your best friend's sick. Your doctor, you can't get your doctor. Who are the other 2? Whatever they are. Some people see their therapist if they have a therapist as one of these. But really, it might be a relation, might be an uncle, might be brother, sister. Are there 5 people that you under pressure can say, look, I'm having troubles? Because that type of connection is really important. And just like, as you said, another way of doing that is finding something you like doing. I was in a band before COVID, playing music together, just a bit of fun. Really, really good getting together. That's great. Sport is great because it's a community. Always talk about and people say, my kid's unsporty. Well, are you in the theatre group? Are you in the choir? Are you in the anything where it's about us? And I always, my wife says always, say always, but I've always liked putting up the term Ubuntu, which is a South African tribal term, and the best explanation, and there's a whole nother series on that, the best explanation that is, I am because we are. It's a beautiful thing about teamwork, and I come from sport, but I've also been involved in theatre. I've also been involved in music, and that working together. And for older people, there's some men's sheds, right? I know people do lawn bowls because it's about us, not me. Cricket team, basketball team, etc. But I said the band, the theatre group, anything that gets you together with some friends, surfing group, not just surfing by yourself, but a surfing group, especially where you live, mate. The beaches are magnificent. So the swimming group down here in Melbourne, I'm not up for it yet. The blokes who jump in the freezing water in the middle of winter. I'm not, no thanks. But all of these groups are really good for your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So it's really important that you make that point as someone who's been around a while. And I'd like to say we're not old, we're experienced. Getting that, and one of the big things now for a lot of people are going through the COVID era, and also with social media, is a lot of young people are feeling lonely. And there's a difference between being lonely and alone. There's a lot of good times you have alone. So you spend time by yourself, getting, and being present, feeling the whole world around you now. That's different, alone being lonely. And a lot of people are experiencing more loneliness now than before because of technology, because of COVID. And post-COVID is still having an effect on people in decision, especially in Victoria. But getting with a group of like-minded people is fantastic for it.
And so in wrapping up, we just want to pick up on, we've covered physical, mental, emotional. So let's talk a little bit about spiritual. I'm an atheist, so when I see people talking about spiritual, I always get a little bit curious. What does spirituality in this context mean to you, Simon?
It's a really good point, because it's what you believe. Right? I said what you believe about yourself, the world around you, and the greater universe. Now, some people have religion. That's fine. I'm not going to say I'm going to be for or against religion for you. You've got to make your own choice.
Oh,
but there's a whole lot of research show that people involved in a religious group are better off. And some people say it's the religion. Other people say no, it's the group. It's not the deity.
Yeah, I'm one of the latter. I tend to believe in in the social and human connection rather than the deity.
And there's a whole lot of things about, well, do you have people that make you feel spiritually better? Do you believe good things about yourself because of the group you're with? A religious group can do that. A yoga group can do that. Meditation groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, it's that being in part of a group. What does it help you believe? And I said, when you say what you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself. Part of spirituality, what do I believe about myself? Am I a good person? Am I a bad person? Am I going to?
So Simon, looking forward, look, it's one of those aspects when we met a couple of years back at this conference, you were telling me at that time you were pretty busy. Looking forward right now, are you still in high demand going out talking about mental health to people?
No, it's interesting. And my mental health discussion is about I'm about high performance. So what you do and making it, just don't do it well. And part of that now is mental health. So it's been more and more, it's come more and more. But I think I've reached that part. I'm lucky enough to be, as I said, 66. I actually contemplated retirement for about 3 minutes last year. That was about it. I thought, and I just said, no, I'm not ready for it. And we've got 4 grandkids now, so you want to spend more time with them. So my dilemma now, which is a great problem to have, is how much work, how much time with the grandkids, how much holidays. We've just been overseas, I said, for the first time in nearly 5 years. What's the right balance of life for me, which is not the same balance for you or somebody else, but understanding how you can get the right balance. Of course, money's important. Just ask anybody who hasn't got it. But it's not necessarily being a billionaire. It's about how can I utilise the money I have in the right way, that I feel better, that I'm not stressed, that I'm using it the right way to have the life that I want to have. The lifestyle I'm accustomed to, as I say. That's my wife. Sure. That's why my wife's still working. She doesn't want to give up yet. She's loving being a teacher. So we're in that really interesting point about how much we want to do.
Okay, well, Simon, we're just about at the end of our time today. Always a pleasure to have on the show. I've got to have you back again because we've barely scratched the surface. We've got still so much more that we can talk about.
I've got to write the book, mate. I did a course. I've got to write a book. I just haven't written it up. It's all in here. It's a couple in there. I've got to sit down.
That's great. Well,
we'll come on and talk about it.
I'd love to come and talk to you about your book for sure. So, Simon Madden, pleasure to have you on Dollars and Making Sense. Until next time, ladies and gents, checking out on socials. Simon's got his own site as well. Thanks for being on Dollars and Making Sense.
Thanks for having me again, Ray. Beautiful.